Today we're diving deep into the most talked about yet misunderstood finishes in the woodworking community, wipe-on polyurethane. It's one of the easiest to get that professional smooth as glass finish without a spray booth, fancy setup, or losing your sanity. By the end of the video, you'll know exactly how to use wipe-on polyurethane, when to use it, how to avoid the common mistakes that ruin otherwise perfect projects. Stick around because I've got some pro tips that even seasoned woodworkers miss. And I'm keeping one secret that I'm going to discuss at the end of the video around my secret to getting the most perfect finish. So what is wipe-on polyurethane? Well, it's nothing more than polyurethane diluted down. And in the case of this can here, this is an oil-based, so it's diluted with mineral spirits. That's it. Nothing magical, nothing secret. Just thinned down polyurethane. How good can it be? The thinner consistency means it levels itself nicely. You don't get any streaks or bubbling or blotching or air bubbles in it. You don't get any brush strokes, or if you're using a foam pad, air bubbles. It's easy to wipe on and goes on really smooth. Think of it like coffee. Same caffeine, just more water. Polyurethane comes in many different shapes and sizes. What I just used was wipe-on polyurethane oil-based. This is my go-to, and it's in the finish that I like, warm satin. But polyurethane, which you can dilute down, this is a water-based polyacrylic. You can dilute this down. It will act like a wipe-on poly, but this one is also clear satin. I actually don't have any gloss. It's just not a preferred finish of mine. Now, what's the difference between satin and gloss? Well, with wipe-on polyurethane, the satin is going to give you a more warm, natural look. The gloss is going to be more reflective and give you a shiny surface. So those are going to be your two main finish types. Satin for warm and natural. Gloss is going to give you a deep reflective finish. My go-to preferred finish is satin. I like it because the world has enough shine already. So when to use wipe-on polyurethane? Well, this is perfect for when you need a easy, consistent finish. It doesn't leave brush strokes. It's perfect for furniture, boxes, projects where brush marks just aren't acceptable. It's not great for floors or surfaces that are really going to take a beating. You're going to want to use the full strength polyurethane for that. So this coffee table behind me, I've used 2 coats of wipe-on polyurethane already, and I've got a few secrets that I'll tell you about on how I finish this. So basically, if you can get it in and out of your shop without a crane, wipe-on poly will do the trick. Anything bigger than that, you're gonna need the full-strength polyurethane. Now, before we start, there's a few things that you're gonna need to apply wipe-on poly. First thing I like to do is make sure that my surface is sanded. I have a nice sanding sponge here that I use for 320 grit. I use some gloves to keep the wipe-on poly off my hands, and I use some cloths, and these are just cut up t-shirts to apply the wipe-on poly. Last but not least, you're gonna wanna get yourself a really good quality tack cloth to pick up all the loose dirt. Wipe-on poly is very sensitive to dust and sawdust all over your workpiece. It's gonna contaminate your finish, and you really don't want that. Getting a good tack cloth is gonna save the day. The last thing you're gonna need for wipe-on poly is patience. This stuff takes a while to dry. Yes, you're laying it down in thin coats, but wipe-on poly isn't as quick as lacquer spray finish. And if you missed my lacquer spray finish video and you want a quick drying finish, check out lacquer spray finish. First order of business for wipe-on poly. The prep is everything. You've got your tack cloth, and you're gonna wanna sand to 320. Or 220 in some cases. Now, the surface should feel like glass before you start. If it feels like a cat's tongue, you need to do some more sanding and you're not done. All right, the application. Now I'm gonna walk you through a live demonstration of the application and all the steps. First things first, with applying wipe-on poly, we wanna make sure the surface is sanded. Get your 320 grit sandpaper and go in the direction of the grain, okay? Next, we want to take our tack cloth. Get your tack cloth all over your sanded area. Make sure it covers all of the area you just sanded and gets away all those contaminants. Tack cloth. All right, next step, we're just gonna take our wipe-on poly, apply it to our cloth. If you have a container and you mix your own and say you dilute it with mineral spirits, you never want to dip your cloth into the poly. It could contaminate it and you don't want that. Okay, so now I have my wipe-on poly on my cloth and I'm simply going to apply the finish to the surface. I'm going in the direction of the grain for these long boards here on the bottom. I hope you can see the shine from the camera angle there. All right, and it's as easy as that. Now, the first coat is gonna raise the grain a little bit, but don't worry about that, okay? After you apply your first coat, you're gonna let it dry. Now I'm gonna get into one of my biggest, best kept secrets, okay? When you're on the last coat and you have a little bit of fuzz on the surface, okay? Here's what you're gonna wanna do. You're gonna wanna grab yourself a paper bag, crumble it up, and I've been using this for a while, but this paper bag is going to really buff the surface, okay? Basically what this paper bag acts like is a very fine sandpaper, about 2000 grit. When you're ready to finish your application, you could also use paste wax, but before I do that, to get any of the pilling or fuzz off of the surface to make it feel extra smooth, I like to take my brown paper bag and just rub it on the surface. I'm going in the direction of the grain and I'm just making sure it has a nice smooth finish. This is gonna get all that pilling, all that fuzz, any dust that settled into your finish. It's gonna get all of that off. All right, now I'm gonna go through some common mistakes. Number one, using too much. If you see streaks or puddles when you're applying the wipe-on poly, that means you have too much. What you can do to fix that is take your cloth and just scoop up some of that extra and wipe it in other areas. You could see me doing that when I was wiping the wipe-on poly on the surface. Number two biggest mistake is gonna be skipping sanding between coats. You are gonna wanna sand between coats because those little dust nibs that are gonna dry, you're gonna feel those on multiple finishes later and it's just gonna be harder to get those out. Most common mistake number three is, it's cold in here. Making sure that you're not applying your wipe-on poly in a cold temperature. You're gonna wanna make sure your wipe-on poly is brought to room temperature, even if that means keeping it inside, coming to room temperature before you start. All right, number four, one of the biggest mistakes is touching your wipe-on poly to see if it's dry. That fingerprint is gonna leave a mark in your finish that you're gonna have to get rid of later, and it's gonna haunt you if you don't. So do not be tempted by trying to touch your workpiece to see if it's dry. Here's a couple pro tips that I've learned the hard way using wipe-on polyurethane. Warm up your poly before using it. Room temperature is best. Wipe in long, overlapping strokes to get a smooth, even finish. Sometimes the wipe-on poly is hard to see that you've applied it, but if you keep going in long, overlapping strokes, it'll make finishing much easier. Now, for a super smooth final coat, you can even dilute it a little more with 50-50 mineral spirits. That's gonna give you a very thin final coat. And if you're doing that, I would almost go 4 coats, but most of the time I do 3 without a 50-50 mineral spirit mix. But if you want an extra layer of protection and a very smooth finish. 50-50 mix will get the job done. All right, well, that is it. Wipe-on polyurethane. It's not a miracle finish, but it is a finish that always delivers. And it's fairly simple to work with. Couple disadvantages to wipe-on poly. There's a long dry time, okay? If you've noticed hanging out in the background here, lacquer spray finish. If you want a quick drying, hard finish, lacquer spray finish is your go-to. If you want something that's easy to apply, takes a little bit longer between coats, doesn't create any spray in the atmosphere, wipe-on poly is your go-to finish. Well, if that helped you and you like what you see, go ahead and like and subscribe. There's a lot more content like this coming your way, and I'm going to share all of my pro tips as I've been working on a lot of different furniture pieces and different builds around the workshop. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Ricksaw.